What's up, Wild Wanderers? It's me, Stevie B, here with Wild Wise, the podcast that delves into the weird world of wildlife, taking the finest animal minds and asking them the dumbest questions. And today, my genius guests are legendary entomologist Dr. George McGavin and Kirsten O'Brien, radio and TV host, whose primary qualification is that she has had as her co-hosts an aardvark, a fox, several dogs, and me. You were actually my very first co-host as a wildlife television person. Do you know that?
I do know that. I broke you in, and I think I was very gentle. Can we just stop everything? Sorry, are you rebranding yourself as Stevie B?
That's what I've always been called.
No, it is not.
It's what my granny used to call me when I was a kid.
I know him as Stevie B.
He sounds like a rapper.
Yeah.
Stevie B's in the house.
I have one particular memory of our time working together, which is a little present that you gave me at the end of filming. Would you care to enlighten our listeners?
Well, it was because we did a little make together, me coming from an art show and you from your animal-y world. So the beautiful worlds combined, and you made something that kids could hang in the trees to attract butterflies, insects, that sort of thing. You made it fabulously on live telly, but right at the very end you went, and there you have it, your very own bug attractor. And I could not resist, mercilessly. So I bought you a bug attractor.
You did. I still have it.
It's a little tractor that we call Bugger.
Brilliant.
It was a wonderful moment. And George, I've been privileged enough to spend many months alongside you in various rainforests around the world. Your enthusiasm is legendary. And additionally, you were also the curator of bugs at officially the greatest museum in the world.
Well, entomology, yes. I mean, well, I think it's the greatest museum. I mean, it's not the biggest by any means, but I think we can boast a couple of special things in the collections, like the oldest pinned insect in the world, 300 years old, the Queen in the reign of Queen Anne, collected in 1601 or something. I mean, amazing. No, 1701. Hang on a minute. Anyway, it was old, 300 years old.
There's also
on its original pin.
The wonderful kind of spine-tingling experience. I can remember the first time that you went through those wonderful drawers and showed me some of the insect actually pinned and written in the hand of Darwin himself.
Yes, we have a few Darwin specimens and a few Wallace specimens. But actually, the most special thing for me about the museum is the fact that in the airspace of that museum collection is where evolution was first aired to an audience, 1860. So 400 of Oxford's great and good filed into this room to hear a discussion about evolution. Darwin was supposed to be there, but he was off sick. He had some thing that he picked up on the voyage of the Beagle and was taking a hydropathic cure somewhere. Anyway, it was at this event in the afternoon when Samuel Wilberforce, who was the Bishop of Oxford, said to Huxley very angrily or very haughtily, "Is it on your grandfather's side or your grandmother's side that you were descended from an ape, sir?" And Huxley rose and said, "I would sooner be descended from an ape than from someone who employed a divine to stifle the truth." Uproar. There were people fainting apparently in the aisles, etc. And both sides claimed victory. But
did this also include the captain of the Beagle as well?
Yes, Fitzroy was there as well, unbelievably at the back. And when he heard the uproar, all the stuff, and he stood up holding a Bible and saying, "If I had known I had carried on my ship such a man as this." But it was drowned out by the general hubbub. But there you are. I mean, that was just months after Origin of Species was in print for the first time, 1859, late, and actually not long after the museum building opened. So what a fantastic place to work. I could go up there into that room anytime I wanted and just sniff up a few molecules that might have been exhaled by Huxley or somebody.
Yeah, well, I have to say it's been, to me, probably my favourite building in the whole world. And thank you so much for allowing me to spend time behind the scenes there with you guys.
My pleasure.
Right, lovely people. Let's get to the news first of all. Kirsten, can you tell us what's been happening in the world of natural history science?
Yes, bizarre primates take nose-picking to the extreme. New footage shows that the nocturnal lemurs of Madagascar, stick their fingers up their noses and then they lick off the mucus. And they don't just use any finger for the job either. The primates go spelunking for snot. Have you made that word up?
No, it's true. Spelunking means like cave exploration.
Oh. Right, okay, well then it's fitting in this case. They go spelunking for snot with the ultra-long, witchy middle finger they typically use to find and fish grubs out of the tree bark. A reconstruction of the inside of an aye-aye's head from CT scan shows its spindly digit probably pokes all the way through the animal's nasal passages right back to reach its throat, researchers report in the Journal of Zoology.
Well, we
both
have young kids, so I've seen this happening.
The spelunking goes on, whatever it was, all the time, doesn't it?
George, you filmed aye-ayes before, right?
We did film an aye-aye in Duke University in an installation there, and we were hoping to film it hunting for its prey because it uses the middle finger to tap on the wood, and it taps wood. And it can hear the sort of, like a builder, hitting your wall going, oh, that's not going to do. There's a hollow in there.
Does it do the noise as well?
No,
going to cost
have
you.
That replaced. Anyway, it taps away and it finds the grub, and it then uses its teeth to get under the wood, and then it eats it. But of course, the finger is held. What's interesting about the finger is it's held back out of the way, and it goes cold. And when it wants to use it, it bends the finger forward and blood rushes into the finger, so it becomes quite warm and very sensitive, so it can just detect. But if you've got a digit like that, I mean, why not use it for other things?
No, why wouldn't you get right to the back, up your nose?
Scratch, yeah.
If you've not seen one of these before, to my eye, it looks like a cross between Dobby the house elf in Harry Potter and a bit of a weird niche reference. Do any of you remember the smoking advert where we all got told we were going to get really long fingers from just holding cigarettes all the time? Does anybody remember? Because that's what its fingers remind me of. See, I said it was a niche reference. Yeah. But yeah, so it's got the long fingers. But Dobby the house, can you not see that?
I think they're very beautiful animals. Of course, they're now very rare. Of course, they come from the giant island of Madagascar, where they are now as rare as hen's teeth. So it's a great shame.
Let's move on to story number 2.
Murder hornets have a new common name, northern giant hornet. So hornet queens, as long as a human thumb, and the hornets have raiding parties that mass slaughter whole hives of adult honeybees to steal the chubby larvae.
Yep.
Larvae, yeah, as wasp food.
George is shaking his head and breathing out deeply as we say this.
I'm just saying, here we go. Let's make wasps into the bad guys again.
But isn't that kind of the idea of this new story, is that they're trying to get away from the name of...
Oh, good.
Northern giant hornet doesn't sound,
Read on.
There you go.
Well, so I guess because they were so much during COVID-19 seen as being this evil insect that had come from Asia particularly, they were looking for a new common name that didn't include Asian giant hornet, because that as well is a bit of a misnomer. Yeah. And so they've now come up with the northern giant hornet.
I mean, I object now to the northern bit being in there.
But the thing is, Steve, people don't even like common wasps, the paper wasps. I mean, and yet they are remarkable creatures who save us billions of pounds. If you want to spray your garden, you don't have to. If you have a wasp nest, they will take all the pest away for absolutely free. And people, the number of times I get asked, what's the point of a wasp? I go, oh, God, do I have to go through this again? And I usually say, well, what's the point of a fly? What's the point of a dog? What's the point of you, sir? And they go, to make more of you, which we don't really want.
Right now, George, I'm going through this list of questions and scrubbing out about half of them.
No, we'll go over them again.
All of them.
Anyway, of course, this happened because of transportation of goods, and in one fell swoop, it came in a consignment of earthenware pots from wherever it came from. Far East, right over to Spain, Portugal, France. I mean, and that's it. It's just one hit. And of course, once it's released in the wild, and you don't keep on top of it, it can do very well. I mean, we're fortunate in the UK in that we do keep an eye out for this thing, and as soon as we find a nest, it gets clobbered. But it will eventually become a part of the UK, of the UK fauna.
Can you just train them not to be at weddings? Because that can really ruin a day, can't it? Fine, as long as
I
it's
think that would be the most interesting thing about a wedding, actually, to be honest.
Kirsten, next news story.
Giant honeybees send waves rippling across their open nests by flipping their abdomens upwards in coordination, a sight that approaching predators seem to shy away from. So a new study is revealing details about what triggers the behaviour. It's known as shimmering. That shimmering is strongest when the bees are shown a dark object that moves against a light background under bright ambient light. So researchers report in the September Journal of Experimental Biology that the setup simulates animals such as hornets, one of bees' main predators, flying against the bright sky. It shows what visual cues set off the behaviour.
This is another animal that I know you featured in Swarm Chasers, is that right?
Yeah, well, I don't think we filmed this particular one. This is Apis dorsata, the giant honeybee, which makes these hanging open combs on branches in Vietnam, Cambodia, places like that. And they are phenomenal. And I tell you, it is a very alarming sight if you see one of these things and they perform that shimmering dance on the comb. If you've got any sense at all, you will back off. I mean, and yet there are honey hunters who climb up these trees and get the comb and hack bits off it and stuff. A job I would not want to do. Really.
Sort of mini Beyonce's is what I'm sort of imagining.
I wish our listeners could see you right now.
Hundreds of Beyonce doing exactly that. Little.
So we've also filmed these giant honeybees in Nepal in those giant nests, which are just absolutely hypnotic when you see them doing this display, and particularly in response to even a single hornet approaching nearby, and it sends out waves across the nest. But there's one extra added element to this as well, which is in certain areas in the Himalayas, these bees are feeding almost exclusively on rhododendron, I think, which is quite toxic. And so the honey itself takes on psychedelic properties.
Ooh.
It does. So even minute amounts of it can be poisonous, but if you have the right amount, it can give you
away.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
Steve, I've actually got some here.
Oh, let's give it a go.
Yeah, just a very small lick's all you need.
And our last rather salacious bird story.
Here we go. Bustards may use plants to treat STIs during breeding season. So a wild turkey-like bird tends to eat more toxic plants during the breeding season as medicine to fend off sexually transmitted diseases, and so appear more attractive to potential mates. Male great bustards, the heaviest flying animals alive today, expend great energy in elaborate feather displays to attract females. They also present their cloaca. Cloaca.
Excuse me.
The common opening for their digestive, urinary and reproductive tracts to females. I'm not sure I'd want you guys doing that, thank you very much. Who appear to examine the orifice, even peck at it, possibly looking for those signs of infection.
Yes, it's a beautiful story, this. But the kind of the science at the end is that scientists discovered that extracts and oils from the plants were having effects on pathogens that the birds were actually suffering from during the breeding season. And certain flower extracts were killing 98.6% of protozoa and up to 81.3% of worms, as well as things like purple viper's bugloss showing an impact on fungus as well. So they are treating diseases that could compromise their breeding success.
Yeah. And if I could paraphrase the late great Ian Dury here, there ain't half some clever bastards.
Nice, very nice. Okay, so before we get into the questions, I have a regular round which I want to hit you guys with, which I'm going to start with this.
Steve.
It was me.
Yeah, calling the kids for breakfast. It's ready.
It's the wildlife sounds round. I'm going to play you a couple of sounds which are I think unusual, and we're going to try and figure out where they come from, what animal is making those sounds. So this is number one. Any ideas?
Sounds like someone plucking a harp on a desert island, having a lovely time.
What are your thoughts, George?
I'm just drifting away.
Isn't it nice?
On the water there. Thinking.
Oh, that sound slightly gives it away.
Oh, that's something. Not a Scooby, I'm afraid, Steve. I hope to God it isn't an insect.
Good. That's great. Well,
Everybody's going to go, eh.
Yeah.
He doesn't know anything.
Know it.
Okay, let's try
It's
our
a
next
frog,
sound.
Some sort of froggy thing. Very deep, very low.
Yeah.
And the only animals I know that can produce low notes are elephants and whales.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh,
Going
so
into
would
the
you say that's on
infrasound there.
land or
That's
water?
a
Try and nail
well,
it down.
yeah,
I
but
would
you
go
wouldn't know
water.
if it was a hydrophone. You wouldn't know it was underwater.
Very good. Very good. Well, that brings me on to my next sound, which very much is underwater, and it's this.
Do you know that?
That is the fart of the greater Steve Backshall. Filming.
Lesser spotted.
Well, I love the fact that even our eminent entomologist doesn't have answers for that. That is a very, very strong start for me. So we'll resolve that a little bit later.
Okay.
But
You're not telling me one of those is an insect.
none of them are bugs.
Oh,
None of them. I
God
wouldn't
for
bring
that.
in.
Relax.
I wouldn't bring in bugs with you. That would be no contest, would it?
Well, it might be.
Right. Well, let's get to the amazing questions that we've had delivered from our listeners. Starting off, one for you, George, from Elizabeth Brown, who asks, where do the fruit flies that congregate on my bananas come from? Have they smelled them and get in the house, or do they breed on my bananas?
Well, very good question. Anybody who keeps fruit in a bowl for rather too long will know that it seems to almost spontaneous generation. It's almost and this, of course, is what people thought for a very long time, that matter, as it decayed, could spontaneously generate life. Like if you had a piece of dead meat or something, a bit of flesh, it would eventually produce flies. And of course, they realised eventually by putting dead or decaying stuff into glass jars with a muzzle and top, it never produced flies. So, this goes back 400 years or so. They can smell, insects can smell stuff from a very long way away, and fruit flies do breed outside. They are everywhere. The eggs are everywhere. So it doesn't take long for them to find a bowl of fruit that's gone slightly whiffy. And you might get one species, you might get two. I mean, it's actually very interesting. It's very, very interesting. You can produce large amounts of Drosophila in a very short time if you just have a rotten banana.
Is it more of a summer thing?
It's
in
more
our
of
houses?
yes. It's a summery spring thing. But yes, I mean that's a very. I mean, you could breed them. You could find out if you've got any mutants. In fact, in your kitchen, you could probably work out the genetics of. No, I'm not kidding. But yeah, interesting.
One of the most fascinating programs I've seen of yours was one where you created the House of Decay.
God. Can I tell you a story about this?
Please do.
Right. So it was called Afterlife, and we recreated a family kitchen and garden in a glass box at Edinburgh Zoo, and we filled it full of food, as if a family of four had suddenly been abducted by aliens. We heated it to 30 degrees and really humid, and watched it rot for 8 weeks. It was unbelievable. And we had a spit on which was a suckling pig, which transformed itself in the space of a few weeks into 10,000 flies, and it was completely hollow. And filming in there was one of the least pleasant things I've ever done.
Filming in there?
Yeah, I mean, in the box with this decaying pig. And after one day's filming, I got a taxi back to Edinburgh Airport. And even though I'd washed and changed my shirt, the stench was... Oh. And I got in the cab and the guy said, what you been doing, pal? I said, I'm filming with a dead pig, actually. Yeah, you're minging. You're stinking my cab out. And he threw me a can of Lynx Africa over the seat and said, use some of that. I went, oh, really? Okay. So now I end up at Edinburgh Airport smelling a dead pig and adolescent male on a hot day.
Yeah.
It was a nasty combination.
I mean, the whole thing was pretty unpleasant.
Yeah.
But actually seeing in near enough real time how decay affects things in a way that you never normally would, because you controlled the whole situation was fascinating.
It was a fabulous show, and I think you can still get bits of it on the web somewhere. But some fantastic clips from it.
My brother forgot about a chicken in the oven once and left it for a while.
Yes.
And then when he came back, maggots would it have been, were writhing inside.
Yeah.
Where have they generated themselves from then?
You
If
put
that's
a piece of dead meat or a piece of fish skin, fish head, and it will literally be 30 seconds any time of year. You put it outside on a wall or a fence post or something, and it'll be literally less than a minute before the first fly arrives. And we filmed also with a dead chicken carcass in there. And one of them hadn't seemed to decay at all. So we had an analyzer for gas, a handheld analyzer, and I stuck it up this chicken's fundament to see what it was, producing, and it didn't go off. And I said to the director, I said, "Is this thing working?" And he went, "Yeah, it was working earlier." So one of the things you can do in a closed box with stinking food is to fart. So to test it, I just held this little machine to my backside and went, and it went absolutely ballistic. Like, there was ammonia, hydrogen sulfide, a lot. And I said, this machine has just told me that my bottom gas is worse than a 6-week-old chicken.
Can I borrow that for my husband?
Classic bit of TV, that one. TV gold.
Glorious, just glorious. Okay, so we have next question coming in from Vicky Richards Barton, who asks, why do some moths in the Amazon drink from your eyes, especially as they live in the rainforest?
Why not? Your eyes contain lots of salts, and that's what they're actually after. So it's not surprising at all. I mean, they would have evolved to feed on the eye secretions and other secretions of other animals, and you just happen to be an animal. And in fact, there are some that actually feed on blood now. So there are moths that pierce the skin of fruit and feed there. But of course, as we all know, human skin is very like an orange skin, and that's why they train injections. If you have to do an injection, you train them up on fruit first, on oranges, because it's the same sort of texture and feel. Well, of course, moths have just gone, okay, there's something worth having in this flaccid pink human ear. I'll have a crack at that.
The mucus as well, what we would call sleep. There must be something in that.
It's all food, mate. Insects will, if it's there, they'll have it.
There are clearly certain salts that we have in our bodies which are not actually readily available in the rainforest, because if you're ever on an expedition,
salt licks,
but if you hang out your clothes, you hang out your dirty undies on a line, having washed them out, come back the next morning and they will be covered in bugs. It's one of the best places to go and actually look for them.
You washed them on expeditions.
I may have done.
What's the point?
But we can go one better than that, because on expeditions with you, George, there is always a special bucket alongside the long drop, which George uses to collect what, sir?
Well, I do like people to have a whittle in there, so that I've got a nice bucket of urine that I can spread out on a sandbar somewhere, because butterflies love to drink at wet, salty pools, and urine is very, very attractive to them, and you can get nice swarms of butterflies all coming along, feeding on this stuff. Yeah.
Especially in Guyana, I can remember those vast clouds of yellows and whites, the sulfur butterflies.
Yeah, absolutely.
There would be thousands and
essential
thousands of them.
salts, yeah.
Yeah, all drawn in.
We missed a trick now on your bugger tractor. You should have ended the make by going, and I'm
peeing
just going to
it.
do a little whittle on it, and away we go.
Next up, okay, an incredibly simple question, and sometimes the simplest questions have the most complex answers. So this is from Levi, age 7, Levi Payne, who asks, why do spiders have 8 legs?
Why not? Why shouldn't they have 8 legs? Because if spiders didn't have 8 legs, Levi, we'd confuse them with insects. That would be terrible. No, spiders come from a group of animals that in evolutionary history had 8 legs. I mean, there are other arthropod groups where they have 10 legs. In the insects, they have 6 legs. It's just the way they evolved. And all of these animal groups came originally from a worm-like ancestor that was marine, that would have had lots of appendages. So in some groups or clades, the legs became reduced to 10. In some, they became reduced to 8, the spiders. And in insects, they became reduced to 6. So it's just the way it evolved.
Do you run faster the more legs you have?
Well, there is evidence that if you have lots and lots of legs, you can't run very fast. Because if you think about the centipedes, they're quite fast, but the really fast ones have fewer legs. The house centipedes that you find abroad, yes, that they are very, very fast. And I think probably the longer your legs, you need fewer of them. Because if you have lots and lots of very long legs, that's a recipe for a disaster, darling.
So now, today, I mean, arachnids are still incredibly diverse, but insects are more diverse. We
Way
have
more
insect
diverse,
species.
yeah, way more diverse.
And so if you go back and looking towards the common ancestor, approximately when would that have been? And do you have any idea how many legs that would have had?
Well, if you go back to when life evolved on land, sort of Silurian, Devonian, so for 400 plus million years ago, it's a bit hard to know who was on land first, but there were certainly carnivores on land, which implies that there must have been things for them to eat. So there were certainly early spiders and early insects around. I mean, it would be great to find the first one, and it's a bit hard to know. And we will always probably find earlier ones as we do more and more work. But spiders evolved on a different route entirely. They're all carnivores, with the exception of one, actually, which was found not long ago, which is the only vegetarian spider. Yes, good boy. It doesn't kill prey for its lunch. But insects, of course, really had the ideal plan. They had the ideal plan. They reduced all the segments of these early creatures into 3 major groups. The head, which contains 6 segments historically. The thorax contains 3, which is the powerhouse of the insect, the engine room. The legs are there, the wings are there. The abdomen contains all the guts, all the normal bits that insects and other animals have. So they were able to specialize these 3 areas. And the power of flight, which of course they got millions of years before birds and bats, gave them a real superpower. They were able to avoid enemies, avoid changes in climate. It gave them, a real in. And the beetles, which are the biggest insect group, had an extra trick up their sleeve. They transformed one of their pairs of wings, the front pair, into a sheath, a protective sheath, which meant you could now go anywhere, into carcasses, into soil, into dead wood, without damaging your flying wings. So the hind wings became the flying wings, the front wings became a sheath-like protection, and now you've got all the good points that insects have, plus one more. You can go virtually anywhere, and that's been the case for a very long time.
In the way that, is it if we affect our big toe, it affects our balance? If they lose a leg, does it affect anything?
No, surprisingly, insects can lose legs relatively easily. In fact, a few insects, they are evolved to lose a leg, and it won't do a huge amount to them. Depends which leg you use. If you lose one on one side, they can cope very easily. If you use one on the other side, they can cope. You start to lose 2 on the one side, things are getting a bit iffy.
Just running round and round in circles.
And if you lose 3 on one side, you're stuffed, basically. But of course, some insects, like stick insects, can regrow a leg, not as good as the first one, but at the next time they shed their skin, up until they're adult, of course, and then that's it, you don't molt again. But in the old days, it's probable that insects grew and continued to molt again and then again until they evolved wings, which became a bit of an issue. But insects are the most successful and the most wonderful animals on the planet.
To any of you out there who basically could listen, like I could, to George all day long, you're going to be groaning now because I've got a couple of questions here which I think are pretty much my ballpark. So the first one is from Jasper, age 11, who says, when two Komodo dragons bite each other, does the venom affect the bitten one? And also Green Goose, who asks, why don't venomous animals get harmed by their own poison? So the second question there, the reason that venomous creatures don't get harmed by their own venom is because essentially if you eat a venom, its primary function, or the element of it that is going to do the most damage, are proteins. And proteins are broken down incredibly well by our digestive juices in our stomachs. So theoretically, you could drink some venom from some of the most toxic creatures and it isn't going to do you any harm. There are also, additionally, because venomous creatures will bite themselves occasionally in extremis, venomous creatures tend to build up over time a resistance to their own venom. Not an immunity, but a resistance. And that can be a really, really potent and powerful resistance to that venom. And that is almost certainly the case with the Komodo dragons. So, these animals get accidentally bitten by their own kind, or they bite themselves in a kind of frenzied activity around a carcass or something. And over deep time, that is going to evolve into a certain resistance, a certain strength, antibody to be able to deal with that venom. It's not the same as immunity. So venomous snakes can bite and kill other venomous snakes. In fact, there are some that specialize in it. But the difference between venom and poison is very important. And if you're ingesting it, if you're taking it into your stomach, it's going to be neutralized by stomach acids. Right, we are going to resolve our sound quiz. And just because I've been practicing this for ages, I'm going to start by doing this again. Oh, it takes me back. Johnny Weissmuller,
Johnny
right?
Weissmuller, yes, the very same.
Okay, so first of all, this sound here. Now, do we have any thoughts about this one? Describe it for us, Kirsten. What are you hearing?
Well, I'm picturing some sort of Polynesian island and just lazing and somebody plunking something. That's all I can hear. The waves lapping, some plunking going on. I can't hear an animal noise in there.
George?
What's that?
Oh, not that.
That's a lion.
Well, it's a very lion-like kind of sound.
No, I really haven't heard it. I mean, I got completely fooled once by an oil bird, which I heard for the first time on a trip, and I didn't know, not a clue what it was.
So this is from one particular island in Alaska. I've been lucky enough to go and stay up there for about 10 days or so, which is known as Walrus Island.
It's Thor the Walrus.
Yes.
Not him, of course. Because he's doing unspeakable things just now in Whitby, or he was.
Yeah, we've had a couple of walrus around in the last few years, haven't we? I've never heard of one around the British Isles my entire lifetime, and then two in the space of 2 or 3 years.
It's like buses.
Yeah. This one particular place in Alaska is a haul out for thousands of walrus. And they have an amazing, astounding vocal repertoire. But this one song, it's the only place that we hear it. It's called chiming. And it's created from a resonance chamber in their pharynx. It's only used during the breeding season. And it's this incredible bell-like chiming. You'd be sleeping in your tent at night and all you can hear is that kind of ringing sound.
Well, don't forget it. That's
Sorry, is it the males that do it?
I believe it's both.
Right,
I believe it's
okay.
both species, yeah.
So a little song
ding
for each
dong.
other,
You're
yeah.
not wrong.
Yes, yeah. Both species. I believe it's both sexes, Kirsten, not both species.
Okay,
Both sexes.
interesting. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, right. Our next sound was this one. Any ideas?
Well, I thought it was a whale. I thought it was some whaley thing because it's very deep and some hydrophone recording.
So that
Or an
it's
elephant.
not underwater. That is on land.
Okay.
Elephant. You're in geographically in the right kind of area.
A coyote, she says.
Geographically, Africa or
I
India.
don't know whether. No, I don't know.
No, Steve, I don't know.
Okay, so it is actually from a bird.
No.
Yeah, and deep sounds tend to come from larger animals, right? So, any ideas?
A big bird.
Ostrich?
Yeah, spot on. That's exactly what it is.
I've never heard an ostrich make that noise.
Yeah, this is the booming call of the ostrich, which is, I mean, it's very big cat-like, isn't it? Really, really loud, really resonant, really deep, and very, very surprising. Yes,
I am surprised.
Okay, last of all,
2-0.
because we were.
He's got us.
Sorry, Jeff. How do I get rid of the last sound? Okay, gotcha. Yeah, as easy as that. Okay, right, all right. Okay, so now this one is underwater. What do we think this is?
Platypus.
I bet it's something weird, like a giant clam or something. So, because it's a sort of, it's something really
Bit
unexpected.
gurgly.
Very unexpected.
Very
I
unexpected.
think this is really exciting. So I've just been doing some work with a remarkable scientist called Professor Steve Simpson.
Well, I should know what that is then, because Steve Simpson is my best mate.
No, seriously?
Steve Simpson was my best mate in the entire world.
You scientists all know each other.
We were at Oxford together for 20 odd years.
Well, how about that? Well, okay. So this probably isn't going to be quite as big a surprise to you as it was to me. But currently, one of his areas of research is the songs of fish. So it's a whole new realm of study where Steve and his colleagues are finding out that fish species have an array of calls that could be as complex as found in birds. They have display calls, they have contact calls, they have alarm calls, and this one is from a fish called a sergeant major. It's from a reef in the Philippines, and this appears to be a territorial call. They respond to anything coming into their patch of the reef with these booming chirps and aggressive calls. But the thing that I find that's most exciting about this is the science of bird song, particularly here in the UK, goes back hundreds of years, right? You know, Victorian naturalists would all have been able to tell different birds apart by their songs and by their sounds. And now, in the 21st century, you have this whole different world of sound, perhaps 20,000 different species of fish that all could have different calls, different sounds made by their swim bladders, made by clicking of their jaws, which are unique to that species, and we haven't even started recording them yet.
But hang on, so that it must be really noisy down there. How? What's going to enable them to be able to pick out those sounds? And why couldn't you hear them when you were diving? Again, idiot question. You know what?
It's not an idiot question at all. No, the thing is, you do hear them, but it's mostly overwhelmed by things like pistol shrimp and parrotfish, which are really loud and have incredibly noisy sounds that carry for a long distance. Sound travels further and faster underwater, and so it's very difficult to localize where that sound's coming from. But what Steve's been doing is using directional hydrophones and sticking them close to things like anemone fish and recording them and seeing how they work. And that kind of technology could be accessible to just about anyone.
I'm beginning to wonder if this is not the same Steve Simpson that I know. The Steve Simpson I know is an entomologist, and he works on obesity, and he works on insect feeding and various other things.
Obesity, fat bugs.
No, but it's to say insect eating is very similar to our eating and anybody else's eating, and the rules that he's worked out for how insects eat and what they need to get are very similar to all other animals. Okay. So we can learn a lot from insects. But I'm beginning to think there might be two Steve Simpsons.
I think there must be.
Yes.
I think there must be because it's definitely got nothing to do with entomology.
But for me, there is only one Steve Simpson.
Well, this is we'll call him Steve 2.
Steve 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's really exciting to think that there is a whole new generation of scientists, citizen scientists, wannabe scientists, who could go out with a little hydrophone and record for the first time the song of a species of fish. That would be their own. That would be their own little discovery. I mean, that to me is incredibly exciting.
Absolutely right. I mean, and lots of people say, it's all been done. No, it hasn't. The science is, we're just finding out about animals, and particularly insects. I mean, we know very little about them, really. And, I mean, just have a good idea, make a hypothesis, do an experiment, you can do it. Everybody can do it. You just have to have the passion and get on with it.
This next question is one that I absolutely loved, and it intrigues me because of a lecture of yours that I went to, George, which was probably the best I've ever seen. Not blowing smoke or anything, but this question comes from Steph Leo, and she says, why do some animals smell of specific food items? Is there an evolutionary benefit, or is it just coincidental? She says, binturong smell like popcorn. Kakapo smell like honey. Crested auklet smell like oranges. Allegedly, she hasn't sniffed any of these animals herself to certify.
Gosh.
Now, your lecture on smell, George, was
sure
one of the
it was
most...
mine?
It was definitely yours because I'll tell you why. You, through the course of the lecture, had a little tiny fan at the front of the lecture theatre and vials of certain scents, and you would open the vial and the fan would blow the scent up to the very, very back of the auditorium, and the people in the entire room would not just see and hear your lecture, but smell it in full-on smell-o-vision.
I remember that this was to demonstrate the role of insect pheromones. So it was a pheromone effect. So I asked everybody in the audience to be a male moth, or whatever, and the female moth was the odorous scent at the front of the theatre, and I would blow with a very small fan, and I asked everybody to put their hand up when they could smell it, and of course it formed a little fan, of course, because as it blew across the audience, only a few people at the front smelt it, and then it got bigger and bigger as you went to the back as the odor plume fanned out, and then everybody at the back eventually smelt it. It wasn't about how they smell, it was basically to show the mechanism of how odor plumes work.
Yeah. Well,
what would that have smelt like? What would people have been?
Well, I used orange. I think I used orange.
I can tell you some of the smells you used. You didn't just use orange. So first of all, you used bee attack pheromones, which smell like ripe banana. You did. You did. Really? I was there. You also used...
I've done so many, I'm getting very forgetful now, yes.
You also used scatol.
Oh, yes, I used scatol. Yes, poo. Are we going to be talking about poo eventually?
Yeah,
Oh, good.
we absolutely will, yeah. And you used the condensed smell of death. Do you remember this?
Yes, it's coming back to me now.
Was it a pig that had been in an enclosed space for a while,
Yeah,
surrounded
probably
by flies? Was that back?
Or a chicken in an oven.
Yeah.
But
no, I mean, I honestly, to be honest, you're asking the wrong guy here. I mean,
the person who gave the lecture.
No, but I wasn't talking about why animals smelt the way they do. I mean, and of course, smell is a very subjective thing. The fact that we might not be able to smell everything, which is absolutely true. I mean, a dog can smell 10,000 times more than...
And surely that's the answer to the question, isn't it? Because the fact is that the majority of animals, particularly bugs, are operating in a world of smell that we only vaguely, consciously understand. And pheromones are one of the things that drive animals on and drive us on more than we can possibly know. And surely that's why binturong smell like popcorn. There's something in that scent which is related to a very specific chemical which other binturong like, or possibly that bugs don't like, or that its predators don't like, and that's going to be the case for all of the examples that Steph's given here.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have to confess, I think, Steph, you're very fortunate in having smelt a binturong and whatever else you smelt up close. That's amazing. But yes, it could be sexual, it could be, well, anything really. I love the smell of popcorn.
I like the smell of popcorn.
What
Let's
does that
go
mean
out
about me?
looking for some binturong.
I'm gonna find me some binturong. Yes, sir.
I have a one come in now. So I have a question come in now from Elijah, who wants to know if rats really carry diseases that are serious to other animals and humans, and were they really responsible for the spread of plague? And before George gets onto this, I have an answer to this from my little boy, Logan, aged 4.
It all starts with a little flea that jumps upon a rat. It bites the rat and gives it germs, and for the rat, that's it. You feel a little poorly, and then you start to swell. Then you start to spit some blood, and then you really smell. Then you know it's time to ring your, a bell. Along comes Mr. Death and swishes you to hell.
Very good. The cough at the end there, that was just a normal cough.
Well, Steve, I really don't think I can add anything to that, really.
Really? Well,
No,
so my little boy obviously is
Pretty
obsessed.
much summed it up.
He is obsessed with horrible histories, and that is their summation of how plague was spread. George, can you tell us a little bit more about bugs as vectors for disease?
But bugs aren't vectors of diseases, of course. I mean, there are lots of them. I mean, yellow fever, tularemia, malaria, plague, typhus, epidemic typhus, you name it. You know, there are some insects that you really don't want to bite you, really. Plague's an interesting one. I mean, it had a huge effect on the social history of Europe. I mean, a third of Europeans died in the Great Plague outbreaks in the Middle Ages, and it changed the structure of society for the good, in a way, because, you know, it affected everybody, kings and commoners, the priests, and everybody was saying, oh, help us, save us from this affliction. Oh, well, you're a bit busy just now. Brain doesn't seem to be doing very much, but, oh, I'm dead as well, you know. And you know, if you survived and you were fit and you pulled through, you were now able to say, well, actually, I'm not going to work in your fields for nothing, for a hovel. You're going to have to pay me. And, of course, all landowners were going, oh, Christ, we're going to pay the buggers now. You know, okay. So, I mean, it changed everything in an absolutely enormous way. And the conventional story is, yes, it's caused by a bacterium called Yersinia pestis, transmitted by certain fleas, rats, etc. But it did spread to other areas where there were no rats, and some people in the past have said, well, it might not have been Yersinia pestis. It might have been an Ebola-like virus. But now we've dug plague pits and we've got the bacterium from every one of those pits. So we know that Yersinia pestis, the bacterium, was the agent that caused plague, and there are various ways of getting plague. There's the airborne route, there's the contact route, and various other. There are three forms of plague, and we still have plague in the world. It's not rare, but it can be treated now. But there are still question marks around how it got so quickly to places where there might not have been rats, but I think there probably were rats. But anyway.
So we are blaming rats.
Well, we're not blaming everybody. I mean, if you're going to blame anything, it's the bacterium Yersinia pestis. You know, but you know, the fleas were entirely innocent in this because the fleas themselves died, so they got the bacteria multiplied in their gut. It blocked their throat, and they were unable to feed. And as they tried to feed, the sort of recoil of their feeding mechanism caused them to go and inject a huge lump of bacteria into their next host. So it's not the flea's fault, really.
That is a true entomologist's answer right there. Plague?
Don't
fleas
blame
were
the fleas.
victimised.
Yeah, they are victimised, absolutely.
Our last question, one that I know is dear to your own heart, from Daniel J. Spence. Will humans ever switch to bug burgers instead of beef burgers?
Well, it is a thing very close to my heart, and I have been advocating insect eating for some time. Most of the world's higher animals eat insects. In fact, you could rightly say that insects are the food of the world. I mean, think of all the birds and all the other aardvarks and pangolins and anteaters. I mean, we would have very, very few interesting higher animals without insects, and we certainly ate them. And we do eat them. I mean, any country in the world where it's hot, where insects are large and abundant, we eat them. It's not a mystery, and have done for a long, long time. The reason we don't eat them, of course, in the UK isn't anything to do with they're disgusting or they're foul it's because they're not that common. I mean, if you were to collect insects to feed your family of 4, say, or 3 in the UK or somewhere in Northern Hemisphere, you would use up more energy collecting those insects than you'd get back from eating them. So it doesn't make ecological sense at all. So it just hasn't appeared in our cultures. But anywhere else, yes, it's eaten. And you could envisage some factory farming on a vertical sort of system where you could produce insect protein. Yes, but we could also eat a lot more plants. I mean, it's quite clear now that we're not going to be able to feed the world on beef. It's an absurdity. It's ecologically disastrous and has been. Soybean being flown all over the world to feed cows and all the rest of it. And fish, of course, we've overfished the seas just about everywhere. So, we need to change. And one of the things we probably need to do is to start a process of degrowth. I mean, how that will happen is interesting and a problem, but we can't go on the way we have been going on.
I'm thinking maybe we've come full circle and it's a beautiful ending for the northern giant hornet. In a BAP, off we go.
Well, hornets are eaten in Japan. They are extremely highly regarded as a little snack.
Honey fried.
Well,
good.
However you want it, mate. Yeah.
So one of the things that I've seen from doing this job for 25 odd years is that you get a group of biologists together in a room, and pretty soon the subject will go one way, and every biologist I know has a story in this particular field. So I'm calling this section of the show
It's Another Poo Story.
Big George, when I suggested this to you, your response was...
Which one? Which poo story do you want? Do you want a clean one? Do you want a really dirty one?
Hell no. Give us the dirty one.
Okay, well, this is a very sad one, actually. We were filming, and I think you were there, we were filming in Guyana, and one of our directors, a very nice man, got constipated. This is very unusual on jungle trips, because normally it's the other end of the spectrum. And if you're on a trip in the jungle, probably 1 week out of 4 you'll be incommoded in some way.
Is that a word? Incommoded?
Yes, incommoded, yes. So anyway, he was constipated for about 8 days. We were getting worried. And every morning he'd head off the jungle with his roll of toilet paper and a spade, we'd all go, good luck, mate, yeah, go on. And he'd come back, shaking his head, oh no. And on the 9th day we were going, Christ, if he doesn't do something today, we're going to have to get him helicoptered out of here, because this is getting serious. Anyway, there was a lull in the forest, almost this expectation of something great, and then there was this scream, this shout. Oh my God! He went, ah! And it echoed through the jungle. And seconds after that, there were hornbills, animals we had never seen, charging out of the jungle. Like he'd flushed them all out. We thought, where's the camera? We got a camera for this. This is like the Garden of Eden has come alive, and they're all coming our way. And poor old Johnny hobbled back, waddling back. We're all saying, well done, Johnny, well done. Oh, I mentioned his name. Sorry, it wasn't Johnny. It was somebody completely different. Anyway. In fact, that sound was very simple. By God, that's nearly it.
Kirsten, do you have yourself...
It's Another Poo Story.
Yes, I do. Nothing on that level. Mine was, I was very fortunate when I was doing Smart, kids telly show back in the day on CBBC, and the BBC did an Africa season, and somehow as part of that, Smart got a week in South Africa. I mean, I don't think it would happen these days, but we got to go out there and we did various makes and communities and all kinds of things, and we were on the Shamwari park, which was where we were staying a lot of the time, and it being Smart, we would do a big make at the end, and they decided that the big make we were going to do was out of elephant poo. So we made a picture. So basically I spent a day and a half shoveling elephant poo to make this picture with all the flies and all of that. But the strange thing was, at the time, one of the animals had gone missing. I want to say the cheetah. Would there be a cheetah on that park?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they hadn't seen it for a few days. So they were kind of on a bit of an alert of where's this guy gone, a little bit worried. And it turned out after we left, it had been right where we were filming. So at any point, this cheetah could have just appeared. And what's going on here then? But it was a slight career low. You know, what you up to? I'm just shoveling elephant poo for a day and a half. You know, I thought I'd be coming to South Africa and having this incredible time. And I was shoveling poo.
All the Beatles in there. That would be fantastic.
Wasn't there a Turner Prize winner who's...
Yes.
There was, wasn't there?
Feely.
Yes.
That's true, actually.
Yeah.
Chris
Ours
Feely.
wasn't that level. No.
You were at the vanguard of a whole new range of art.
You're right. But the way the pictures were made was we would build the picture first and then we would do it in reverse. So it took quite a long time. You'd all have to get together, a team of people, get it looking perfect, top shot on the cameras, all of that. And then we'd take a bit out at a time. So doing a picture like that it was a lot of poo shoveling. And it wasn't what I thought my BBC trip to Africa was going to be in the end.
So we've come to the end, sadly. I could listen to the pair of you all day long. But before we do, George, you're about to go out on tour, right?
I am. I've got a 10-day tour of England. I think I start off in Lichfield and I finish in Bridport. So it's a 10-day tour to a theatre, hopefully near you.
And then your magnificent book.
Well, I've got I had an audiobook out last year called All Creatures Small and Great. And so a print version of that is appearing in very soon, February the 3rd or 5th or something. And that's called The Hidden World. And that's all about how insects, just how fantastic insects are.
And I've listened to the audiobook, and I have to say, anybody out there listening, it's an absolute work of art. Please do buy it. It will change your life. Kirsten, you got anything you'd like to shamelessly plug?
Well, I just do my thing, don't I? I pop up all over. You know, I was on telly
turn
over
up to
Christmas.
the opening of an envelope.
I was like, oh, was I on that? Oh, there's things I've forgotten I've filmed over the years, and then I'm watching telly and I'm like, oh, no, it's me. How annoying. But no, still on radio, chugging along, BBC Radio Berkshire. And, yeah, all over the shop I turn up.
Magnificent. George, can we end on an inspirational note? Anybody out there who would like to become the next George McGavin, what should they do?
Please don't. No. If you've got a passion for natural history, whatever form it takes, you've just got to do it. And don't let anybody tell you you can't do it. That's just do it.
The soundest words to end on. Everyone out there, thank you very much for listening. This has been Wild Wise.
Stevie B out.